I know this is late, but if you were on the dudes team that won the scavenger hunt at the lock-in, okay, I promised you a gift card. So if you're on the team, come up here. I know a couple of them were dying to get up here. Here's a gift card.
Just kidding. Thank
Here's
you
a gift
so much.
card. Here's a gift card. Here's a gift card. Here's a gift card. Amos, weren't you on their team? The scavenger hunt? No. Who else was? Wasn't there like 9 of y'all? All the Destrehan dudes were on your team? I thought they were on Easton's team. Easton, was any of your buddies on the team that won the scavenger hunt? One? Hey, somebody go run this back to Easton. You can give it to him tomorrow at school.
I got you.
I feel like there was more people. Anyway, we'll find some way to give out the rest of these gift cards at some point. Whoa. People. What? Guys, it was Ava's birthday yesterday. Everybody give it up for Ava. All right, we'll sing happy birthday to you later, but yeah, I guess I'll give you a gift card. There you go. Any other birthdays? No. You know, I got a birthday too, so I got to keep that receipt. Yeah. I'm sure Seth will find a way to find a happy birthday Ava video somewhere that we could put up at some point. Maybe later, maybe right in the middle of the sermon. Okay, hey, remember, we got 3 more, so maybe if you're on your best behavior. And so, no, Josh, sorry, you don't get it. I got to hide these somewhere. If not, somebody's going to steal them. Hey, real quick. So we don't have video announcements today. Boo. Everyone say boo, Seth. Boo. Right? Hey, Seth's working like a whole bunch of different jobs right now, so sometimes he can't get them done. But next week, we'll have them next week for you. Hey, so just to highlight a couple things. Man, I want that gift card back, bro. Hey, real quick, coming up on the 25th, who knows what's on the 25th? Crawfish Bowl, okay? Only Maisie Vogel, if she was, hey, you know what? Maisie gets a gift card. Because she's the only person signed up. She better get this, bro.
It was definitely my mom.
Yeah, well, Maisie is the only person signed up for this Crawfish Bowl. Okay, hey, can someone bright tell me why it's important that we have people sign up for this thing? What you got? Yeah, exactly, okay? So we have a tendency here at Lakeview Christian Center, especially the youth, to sign up the day of or the day before. That's not going to fly for this crawfish boil, okay? How many of y'all read the newsletter this week that I sent out? Miss Debbie read, what did it say, Miss Debbie? And you get crawfish, and if you don't sign up, you don't get crawfish, okay? The deadline is going to be Easter Sunday. Okay, because we have to determine whether or not we want to buy them boiled or we want to boil them ourselves. Okay? Well, it depends on how many people come, bro. Yeah, well, if we have to boil for 6 hours, then, hey, it is for both you and your parents and your families. Okay? So, all of them are invited. Yes. It's going to be here at the church, in the parking lot. We're going to have tents and drinks and probably snowballs too. Okay? So it's $15. Register before Easter. This is one of those things. I will be very upset if you come to me on Friday morning or Thursday night and be like, I forgot to sign up. I'm going to be like, bruh, we told you 15 times. Okay? So it's going to be in every email, every announcement until Easter. Sign up if you're coming. Okay? If we have less than 50, we'll boil them ourselves. If we got more than 50, we'll just buy them boiled. Cool? We all go with the crawfish thing? It's probably going to be for 6. I said 5 in the email. We're probably going to push it to 6. Okay? Any other questions about the crawfish? Perry's boiling them. If we boil. If we boil. Okay? So maybe that will affect your decision. Apparently he's top 3. Not 3. Okay? So figure it out after that. That's really the only big announcement that I have. So if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me. Hey, how many of y'all have phones? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you who have phones, keep your hand raised, have the LCC app? Okay, so the app is a really cool way that, we just stay modern and hip, right? So the Lakeview Christian Center app, when you open it, it looks like this. If you scroll down towards the bottom, you can't see. Well, you should have the app, If you scroll down, there's a little toggle that says youth ministry, okay? It's not super updated because no one ever uses it. However, I'd like people to use it. That way it gives me a reason to update it. So we keep the messages on there, maybe the songs that we played, some other things, upcoming events, right? You can still register for the lock-in, if you want to register for the lock-in. But if you have the app, you can keep up to date with what we do, or let me know, Harrison, the app is not up to date, of which then I will fix it, okay? But LCC app, yeah, what you got? What? It's not updated? You don't get a gift card for that. You already got one. All right, we're going to kick off. We're going to kick this off. I'm also going to, Ian, I'm not giving you a gift card either. He texted me trying to, what? That we'll talk about that later, okay? That's another fun little thing. All righty, here we go. Hey, we're starting early. We're on time today. Look at that, okay? Everybody, give it up. We're on time. Thank you. I apologize for the long sermons. I apologize for Garrett's 52-minute sermon. That's and my 45 minutes. So this one's going to be like 30 minutes, okay? We're going back to 30 minutes so y'all can hold me to the 30-minute thing, and also please hold Garrett to 30 minutes, Cool. So starting out here, hey, cool logo, huh? Like we like this, yes, okay, yes. That was the goal. Okay, we were going for a Hunger Games-esque type thing. This is not AI. I made this one myself with the inspiration of Seth, okay? No, I got the background off of Google. How am I going to make a background from Anyway. Hey, no, it is centered. There's just one less word in fire. Oh, the arrow? The arrow's not centered? Okay, I spent a long time centering it. I promise you it's centered. It just looks off. Hey, if you come up here, there's this little tiny TV right here, and there's a center marking. Well, faith is longer, but then it'd be weird because then under would look slanted. I promise you, I shifted it. It doesn't look good, okay? This is the way to go. So I could say faith under fires, and then it'd be even, but then that would just sound weird, okay? Hey, let's not pick apart the logo here, okay? Okay. Oh, thank you. Ian. Hey, that doesn't get you a gift card, though. Sorry. Oh, okay. All right. Hey, so listen, back when I was a wee lad, about 12 years, about 12 years old, which was about 12 years ago. Okay, do some quick math there. I'm not on status yet, but we're getting there. I was about 12 years old is when I started talking through and asking questions about, hey, I've been going to church my whole life. My parents believe these things. The people around me believe these things. But what do I believe? And started asking questions. Now, 12-year-old Harrison was not asking questions like, is this true or not? I was asking questions to try to disprove what my parents and the people around me believed. Okay, I was really stubborn. I still am, okay? But I wanted to find evidence and proof that Christianity did not exist. Yeah, wow. Wow, can you believe that? Now, what I failed to do from the ages of 12 to 17 was listen. I'd ask a lot of questions, but I didn't want to hear the answers that people had for me. I was doing what a modern term calls deconstructing. Okay, now what is deconstructing? The definition is in your notes. It's a crisis of Christian faith that leads to either a reevaluation of Christianity or sometimes a total abandonment of Christianity. So we got a lot of people in this room, some very familiar faces. You've probably been in this church since you were born. Okay? We've got some new faces, which I'm really glad to see. Some of you people that I've never met before. And then we got some people right in the middle. But I think a lot of us here in Louisiana and South, Western culture understand this idea of religion, this idea of something that has to do with this Jesus guy. And so I think the majority of us can fit inside this category of people who understand at least a tad eensy bit about what the Christian faith is, even if just that Christian faith means I know who Jesus is, like as a person. However, this idea of deconstruction is a period in your life, whether it's now, a year from now, 5 years from now, where you may or may not go through a period where you start to reevaluate what you believe. And you start to ask yourself some of the same questions I asked myself 12 years ago, which is, why am I here? What's the meaning of life? Is this thing that I've been going to every Sunday and hearing about, is that thing true? Have I put to the test some of the things that I've heard, or have I just been a listener and I take those things and I automatically believe them? I sure hope not. I mean, how many things do we hear in our culture today, whether it's on social media or through the news, and we hear it and we're like, that totally can't be right. What do? I normally take out my phone and I Google it. I mean, just this last, it was Tuesday, right? It was last Tuesday, it was April 1st. So everybody on social media was posting all these things that were obviously, not true. And I was in a pickleball group chat, and someone screenshotted a picture, sent it into the pickleball group chat, and it basically said that they banned you spiking the ball at the net, okay, which is, just a very normal part of the game. But the headliner said, pickleball spike is banned. He was like, is this real? Screenshot it, sent it to the group chat. And someone was like, dude, look at the date. It's April 1st. You're an idiot, that type of thing. The quick way for me, I didn't even look at the date. I just Googled it real quick. Did they ban the pickleball spike? And the answer, of course, was no. But that's how, in our culture, we evaluate whether or not things are true or not. We do our homework, we do some research, and we come to a solution. And so what I want us to do during this, I don't really know how long this series is going to be, is go through different parts of the Christian faith. And today we're just looking at religion as a whole and evaluating and asking questions, looking at it and answering, hey, is this thing that we call Christianity, that we believe with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, or at least maybe we've been told to, is that really true? So I want to start off by looking at this idea of deconstruction just a little bit further. So why are people deconstructing their faith? Right? People have been in the church, they have a faith, or maybe it's a kind of a fake faith. And for some reason, things are causing them to say, I don't want to have anything to do with this Christianity thing anymore. And so maybe you might fall into one of these 5 categories. Okay? And if you do, I hope that you continue to listen, because deconstruction isn't necessarily a horrible thing because you're asking good questions, but the important thing is that we don't do what I did at 12 years old, is we ask questions, but we don't listen. So, first reason why young people ages 12 to 35 are deconstructing their faith is first, a lack of trust in large institutions, okay? And when I say large institutions, I'm talking about the government, business, media, whether that's the news or social media. And fourth, and maybe surprising, maybe not, the church. Joe Terrell, who wrote an article of 5 reasons people are deconstructing Christianity, he said, according to Gallup, which is a well-renowned poll, they did an annual honest and ethics survey, said Americans' trust in pastors and clergy hovers at an all-time low. And of course, there's a generational gap. While 51% of Americans 55 or older have a favorable view of church leaders, only 24% of 18 to 34-year-olds said pastors and clergy have high honesty. The 4 primary institutional pillars of modern society, government, business, media, and church, are more likely to be viewed as corrupt, ineffective, and self-serving than trustworthy, effective, and selfless. All right? As someone who works for a church, that hurts my soul to hear that people, just normal, everyday people, would view church leadership or church in general as someone who is corrupt, ineffective, or self-serving, right? But I think there are reasons for why people view the church that way, and I think that they're good reasons. Right? Unfortunately, the church has a bunch of sinful people who make a lot of bad decisions and mistakes. I'm not trying to cover up anything that people in the church do that are wrong, right? One of them would be all the time on the news. You hear of one inappropriate scandal from pastors, one to another. People of influence and authority who claim on one hand, hey, I uphold these standards, and then behind closed doors, they're living life a certain way. And then they get caught, and everybody shines a big old light on it. And what does it do? It hurts the reputation of the church as a whole, because certain institutional leaders do a poor job at living out the Christian walk, or more importantly, living to the standard that church leadership requires. So when people make poor mistakes, yeah, I totally think it affects and stains how people view the church. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because there's been a lie that's going on in people's that they're told. A second one would be church cover-ups. Right? Way too often you hear of something inappropriate happening, whether it's physical, financial, you name it. And what happens is the church decides, hey, we don't want this getting out and staining our reputation, so what are we going to do? We're going to cover it up. We're going to act like this doesn't exist. And guess what? I all the time tried to cover things up as a kid. It felt like I got caught every time. And then the consequences are even worse the more that you just decide to cover it up. And so the bigger the cover-up, the bigger the fallout. And, an easy reason people don't have trust in church institutions. Money schemes has become more of a prevalent thing, especially in mega churches. So churches that are 5 to 10 to 15,000 people, where they're really just people in authority using donations from the church to do whatever they want with it. And it's a huge issue. And then fourth would just kind of be the whole mega church movement in general. The only, one of the big issues that I have, just personally, Harrison has issues with the megachurch movement, is when you have a congregation that is that large, guess what? Yes, that's awesome that many people are coming to church, but all those people are still sinners, right? And when you increase the number of people inside of your church, there's a higher percentage that people do stupid things and make more mistakes. And unfortunately, when you have more and more people as a part of your church, and this is not a knock to saying big churches are bad, just saying an unfortunate fallout is you got more people who make mistakes, and it tarnishes the reputation of those churches. And all of those are reasons that just everyday people who are just either scrolling the news, scrolling social media, or know people inside of the church start losing faith and trust in it because of those things. The second would be we live in a more diverse, accessible, and mobile world. So guess what? The world we live in today is very vastly different than any point in human history. Okay, just to throw out a little fact for you, the modern American didn't drive a car until about 1908 when the Model T came out. Okay, it was right before World War I, which for us seems like forever ago, right? 1908 was 100 and something years ago. Okay, I could do the math, 17, maybe, yeah, sure. 117, that's like 2 generations, worth of people. That was forever ago. But think about before that. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of years of people not having cars. They weren't able to get around. The iPhone was created in 2008. Okay, that's when the first iPhone came out. Guys, that wasn't that long ago. But when we look at life today, we're like, hey, this is normal. And it is for us, but culturally and historically, people grew up and lived in societies, and you didn't really venture much far out of the place that you grew up. You know, my dad tells me stories of if he was going from New Orleans to Metairie, it's like us going from here to Destin. You know, like that's kind of what it was like. People didn't really move around that much. And so when you grew up in a certain type of religion, you kind of just stayed there because there wasn't much more life to explore than that. But today we have access to whatever we want, which I wouldn't say is a bad thing. I think it's great that we have access to a lot of stuff. And we'll get to that a little bit later, the generation that we live in. But, you know, we get to see and hear a whole lot more these days than people ever did in the past. And so with more information, more people are then deconstructing their faith. A third would be Christian leaders are burning out. Josh Packard, who's a PhD, did a study on churches. So he was talking on the strongest and most active church leaders that exist. This is what he was saying about them. He said, they display an extreme level of dedication and devotion to God and religion, and they earnestly believe that institutional church can be fixed and reclaimed. They believe it's worth fighting for right up to the point where they don't. And so people like us inside of churches see our leaders who we back and we support and we trust, and when they decide to leave the faith and they say, hey, I'm not a Christian anymore, now you start to question all the things that you've believed. Because the people you looked up to, they don't believe what they've been preaching for however long. And so sometimes that's big name people you see in church world, and sometimes that's just people you see in your local churches. I mean, there's people inside of this church here in Lakeview Christian Center who in the last 10, 15 years would fit the category of strongest and most active church members who are no longer here, no longer go to church, and probably claim to be Christian, but they don't have anything that in their life that looks like walking the Christian life. And that's a reality. And so people that walk with those people, it affects them. And that starts to change what you believe. Fourth, conformity over unity, right? And this is another big one. Hey, opinions are great. I got no problem with people having opinions. But the problem is that certain people, specifically church leaders and church culture, starts taking their opinions and forcing it upon a whole bunch of other people. This is what I wrote down in your notes. I said, when church leadership begins to extend every doctrinal belief and interpretation of Scripture into a message of, if you don't meet this standard, look this way, talk this way, or believe exactly what we do, you don't belong here. It stops being a reflection of Christ's inclusive call. Instead, it becomes a bubble of Christianity that pushes people out rather than welcoming both believers and seekers into the grace and truth that the Bible invites us all into. Hey, guess what? Shocking story. The story of redemption and salvation is a message that's intended for the entire world. First to the Jew, then to the Greek, and to the rest of the world. So that includes, every sort of race, gender, ethnicity, class, status, doesn't matter how much money you make. The Bible and its story is supposed to be meant for everyone, but way too often, the church starts being inclusive and saying you have to fit the mold that we decide randomly that you have to fit, and if you don't fit in this mold, you don't belong here. And guess what? It pushes people away. I'm not too shocked by that. If we created that sort of standard here in the youth ministry, no one except the inner core would want to be here. And I really couldn't blame them for that. The fifth thing would be political idolatry. So I don't know, when I was 14, I was really big into politics. I could tell you everything about a whole bunch of political, stuff going on. I get that's not everybody these days, but, we see things on the news and we see things on social media and we hear things and, that's cool. But this is the issue. And I think Timothy Keller explains it great when he says, while believers or Christians can register under a party affiliation and be active in politics, they should not identify the Christian church or faith with a political party as the only Christian one. And what do I mean by this? I mean that, I'll just say it. There's two big parties here in the U.S. You got the Republicans and the Democrats. Okay, that's just, factual reality. Unfortunately, the church, just being like general church, and a whole bunch of individual churches have taken this and they say, hey, because we agree with the select few beliefs of the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, now we are the face of this. Hey, if you come to church here, you have to be a Republican. Or if you come to church here, you have to be a Democrat. Well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of things that I totally agree with the Republican Party, and a whole bunch of things I agree with from the Democratic Party. But the same is true of the flip side. I think there's plenty of things that the Republicans do that are completely stupid. And the same thing for the Democratic Party. It's because I have a standard of what the Bible has to say, and you compare what our government is trying to do to the absolute truth of the Bible, and rather not, taking a couple different ideologies and saying, okay, we're gonna take everything that they have to say. But churches do that, and they push people out. Again, a very valid reason. So, if we take all 5 of those reasons and we take a step back, does the Bible have anything to say on this deconstructing idea? I think it does. I think the Bible does speak into this, and it does in Matthew chapter 13, verse 18, where Jesus is telling a parable. He's telling a parable of the seeds. Okay? A whole bunch of seeds are thrown in a whole bunch of different places. And this is the explanation that the Bible gives, Jesus gives in his parable, starting in verse 18. He says, "Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the words of the kingdom, hears this idea of what the gospel is in Christ, and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches it away, what has been sown in his heart." This is what was sown along the path. So, the example of the seed being thrown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself because he's on rocky ground, but endures for a little while, and when tribulation and persecution arises on account of the world, immediately falls away. As for what was sown on the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. And for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word, who understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, another 60, and another 30. There are plenty of people in this room, right, that will be in different categories of these seeds that are thrown. Okay, some of these sound very convincing. It's going to be people that look like, hey, I believe in Jesus, but when the world comes and chokes them out, they didn't have any roots in their faith. They weren't really a Christian. Right? And I could go like that for each of these stories. So people who deconstruct their faith, who have maybe been in a situation like this, start asking questions, and then get choked out by the world, guess what? That's a biblical reality of not everybody gets to hear the story of the gospel and make it into the pearly gates of heaven. However, that doesn't give us any sort of permission to not understand what we believe or to share what we believe. So this is where we're going to kind of transition a little bit. So whatever category you're in, maybe you are 100% confident that you believe in Jesus Christ and you have a personal relationship with him. Awesome. This series is going to help you defend what you believe and give you the information necessary for you to do that. Say you're in the category of deconstructing. Thanks for being here. I'm glad that you're asking questions. This study for you will help examine the questions that you have, and hopefully, and I'm asking that you'll be willing to listen to the answers. And then for the people who would claim, hey, I don't believe in God, I have nothing to do with it, I would just ask you to listen as well. And maybe at the end of this, you'll be convinced of the radical truth and evidence for who Jesus is and the story that he gives for each and every one of us. But today, we're going to quickly address the issue of religion as a whole. So we're not going to look super deep into Christianity yet. We're going to look at, hey, this idea of religion worldwide. When I was 15, I worked at the Winn-Dixie in Destrehan off of Airline Highway, right? Still kicking these days. Love me. Actually, I hated Winn-Dixie. Okay, I can't stand that place. Is this a safe space? Can I say that? Right? I hated that place. However, the only upside to working at Winn-Dixie was, at that time, the amount of food that I would steal. Right? It was like free food. So I'd figured out which aisles had the security cameras on them. Right? And I was a stalker. So I would just stock the shelves. And one of the aisles that I would stock would be the candy aisle. And it's probably the reason that I gained a couple pounds since high school. But what I would do is I'd go down like the pasta aisle because I'd be stocking that, and I'd keep the boxes. You'd fill out all the pasta on the shelf. I'd keep the box, put it on my little cart, wheel it over, wheel it down the candy aisle, and just start taking what I want, put it in the box. And then I'd go to the back, which I knew where the camera were there, and I'd go in a spot where there was a blind spot. I'd just eat candy. I probably stole thousands of dollars worth of candy over the 2-3 years that I worked there. All right? And it wasn't just candy, it was a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, you might be asking, Harrison, did you feel like that was wrong? Yeah, I knew that was wrong. But guess what? I did it anyway. Why? Because I wanted some candy, right? And I didn't have any sort of, feeling inside of me of, hey, this is wrong, and I shouldn't do it. It was this is wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway type thing. That feeling inside of me, though, I wouldn't realize over the next couple years would become me realizing that voice of, Harrison, this is wrong, was actually the convictions that are placed in every single one of us. All of us have this feeling that, hey, we got something internally stirring in us. And that reason is why over 85% of the entire world population would fit under the category of religious. So we have gone over the 8 billion people mark in the world. There are 8 billion plus people living here. And over 85% of those people would classify themselves as being religious. Now, not all of them believe the same thing, okay? There are a whole bunch of different religions out there. However, the vast majority of people would say, hey, I resonate with at least one of those. And that was as of Pew Research did a report in 2024, and that's the conclusion that they came up with. And so, what I would ask from you is, hey, any of those feelings that you have inside of you that determine, hey, is this the right thing or is this the wrong thing? Maybe, just maybe, that gives you a lean hint this way towards some sort of religious reason for that feeling existing. However, just to kind of transition, and we'll come back to this in a second. How many of y'all are attending the Alpha course right now? Yeah, a whole bunch of people over here. Mr. Frank does this analogy on, is it week 1? I think it's week 1, right? Where he typically takes Ian and Joe, and they come up here, and he talks for a really long time as they hold it, and their hands hurt while they're doing it. But they go from this side of the room all the way to this side with a big old tape measure. And he comes over to this side, and he says, hey, this little sliver right here, this is your life in comparison to all of eternity. And right before he explains that, he asks everybody to close their eyes and say, how many of you believe that there is something on the other side of death? And when everybody raises their hand, pretty much, 95% of the room raises their hand saying, yeah, I believe there's something on the other side of death. But when you look at that tape measure analogy, what is so preposterous is that eternity doesn't even, it's a bad example to show what eternity is. Because the tape measure would just be going on and on. My brain hurts every time I think of forever, eternity type thing where time doesn't end. But there is so much on the other side of life, yet we spend so little time thinking about it. So little time. And so I'd ask the same question to you. How many of you think if you were to die right now, don't raise your hand, that there's something on the other side of life? And then my follow-up question to you would be, how much time have you spent in thought or research about what that looks like? Well, guess what? Out of that 85%, not very many of them are doing any sort of research to determine what's on the other side of that. They have that feeling, the same feeling that I had when I was stealing things from Winn-Dixie, the same feeling you might be having right now that something's on the other side of life. That, yeah, there's a higher power out there. There's got to be something. I just don't know what it is. Why don't we spend time trying to figure out what those things are? I'd give 3 simple, easy examples of why we don't do that. The first would be Google, right? So if you Google something real basic, there will be hundreds of billions of responses that pull up on Google. By a show of hands here today, how many of you in the last 2 weeks have made it to page 2 of a Google search? Okay, what about page 5? Okay, page 10. Just Maggie, right? I mean, we keep going on and on. If you Google something basic, there will be so many pages of information. The reason why I think a lot of us don't spend a lot of time researching would be because we get answers real quick at our fingertips immediately. Okay, now pause with me, because you might be thinking, well, we can get the answers immediately, then we should be able to know what we're thinking. The problem is that we're real quick. We typically take the first two Google searches, look it up, read something, and be like, okay, I got it. Guess what? That's not what the series is going to be. We're not going to Google something, click the first link, and share that. We're going to deep dive. People aren't spending enough time in what they're researching. The second example is Instagram. Okay, the average time spent on a reel on Instagram is 3 to 4 seconds. Why? Because we get bored. It's like, oh, I'm reading something. If it's not cool, flip. I mean, I was on social media last night, and yeah, maybe one every 15, 20 reels, I'm sitting there and be like, okay, I'll watch this. The average time on the youth Instagram reel that people look at is 3.5 seconds. Right? So you have to capture somebody's attention in 3 to 4 seconds in order to get them to continue watching what you're trying to tell them or what you're showing them. You can't spend 3 to 4 seconds on researching the eternity of what life is going to have in store and get the answers you're looking for. But that's how we've trained our brains to learn. A third example would be the news. This one shocked me. On average, when an event happens around the world, it takes on average 7.5 minutes for that thing to get reported. And everyone around the world can know it. In 7.5 minutes. And 117 years ago, you couldn't drive. You had to take a horse and buggy. Has life changed? And so we have everything at our fingertips, and it's so quick. You will not be able to figure out what's on the other side of your life even in 7.5 minutes. You're just not going to do it. So why don't we spend some time figuring out the answer to the question of what's going to happen at the end of life? And this is where the Gen Z thing comes in that I talked about us being in. So how many of you were born after 2012? Nobody. Okay, so outside of a couple of the older, Amos, you were born in 2012, huh? Yeah. So you're still Gen Z. He made it. He's not Gen Alpha. All right, 1997, which I'm inside of that. I was born in 2000, so I'm also a Gen Zer. So look at us. Let's give ourselves, Gen Z applause. We made it. Hey, guess what? We are on pace to become the most educated class of people to ever exist. Can you believe that? Yes. So we are supposed to be the smartest human beings to ever exist. People born from 1997 to 2012. So Garrett, sorry, you don't make the cut. He's not going to be the smartest person to ever exist. It's probably not going to be me either. Okay, so this is what I'm asking you. If we're supposed to be that smart, how about we take a little sliver of that knowledge and apply it to figuring out this answer? Man, what a concept. Oh, my goodness. So the question I have to close out the night would be, so who's right? The 85% of people that say religion exists and there's something on the other side of this life, or the 15% that would say, nah, I don't believe in any sort of religion. Because this is where we're going to start. You can't get to Christianity if you don't believe that there is any sort of religion to begin with. So the answer to this question, I think, is basic human rights. If you were to look at every single major religion, so that would be Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, a whole bunch of other isms, right? All of them have the same general principles that everyone deserves some sort of human rights. Now, the exact list of what those human rights are, vary, but the main principle is that everyone believes you're entitled to life, some sort of freedom, some sort of happiness. It's kind of similar to what they put in the Declaration of Independence. Kind of sort of similar. That's what everyone believes, that you have certain human rights granted to you. That excludes extremist groups. Okay, so for example, the people that flew the planes in to the Twin Towers during 9/11, right? They didn't believe people had human rights. But that'd be an extremist group of Islam. They wouldn't support those type of things that were happening. And so while this exact list may vary, the main principle is true. All religions believe in this idea of human rights. The other 15% of this 85% is about 1.2 billion people. And they fall into three categories. The first would be those who would consider themselves atheists. That's 17% of the 1.2 billion. They believe that there is no such thing as a God. There's no God. Never existed, never will exist. There's 20% of the 1.2 billion who are agnostic. Right, if you get confused with the numbers, they're in your notes. Agnostic people believe that they don't know if God exists. They're like, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. It doesn't matter. 63% of the 1.2 billion would categorize themselves as nuns. Okay? Not N-U-N-S, like, religious nun, but like nothing. Like nuns. Now, what do those people believe? They believe in some sort of higher power, that there's a man upstairs, kind of thing. But I don't know what it is. Could be one thing, could be the other, but I'm not committing to anything, and my life isn't going to be committed to any sort of religion. I just believe maybe there's something on the other side, probably, but who cares? That kind of mindset. 63% of the 1.2 billion believe that. So that they believe in some sort of higher power, so that 85% of people who are religious and believe that there's something on the other side of death, that number just went up significantly. It's pushing 95% of every single person alive believes that there is some sort of higher power out there. And why is that? Why do they believe that? Romans 1, verse 19, Paul says, "For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse." Paul, from a biblical standpoint, would argue the reason that all those people are believing those things is because the higher power has created the life that we live in for us to see everything going on and say, hey, this had to come from some sort of higher power. It couldn't just be something that automatically happens. But there's a really interesting argument that I believe personally trumps every sort of person who doesn't believe that there's a God. Rebecca McLaughlin, in her book, The Secular Creed, really phenomenal book just on some of the common trends going on in society. But she quotes one specific person who's important to note. His name's Yuval Harari, and he is a well-known atheist. Okay, he wrote a book that was a New York Times #1 bestseller for a very long time. It's called Homo sapiens, which is the scientific word for human beings, right? Humans. And this is what he had to say. He said, if there is no God who made the universe, there is no moral universe to bend. There is, as Stephen Dawkins put it, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. Human beings have no natural rights, just as spiders, hyenas, and the chimpanzees have no natural rights. Just as our friend Yuval points out, belief in the unique worth and rights of human beings has embarrassingly little in common with the scientific study of Homo sapiens. The very idea of human rights is, as our brother argues, a Christian invention. He makes two distinct points here. The first is that if you believe that there is no God, then there's no such thing as human rights. And you are just as important as spiders, hyenas, or chimpanzees. My first question to you is, do you believe that? Do you believe that if there was a mosquito on you and you smacked it off of you because it was sucking your blood out and really annoying, that it'd be the exact same thing as murdering somebody? For me, that's kind of hard to believe, one. But two, if you really did believe that, it would then shape how you lived your life. Life would then be all about you. And it wouldn't matter what you do or say, because guess what? Human rights don't exist, because I matter just as equally as everything around me. And if I want something, well, guess what? I'm going to go do it, because I'm at the top of the food chain and I can do whatever I want. And it doesn't interfere with anything that anybody else believes in. And the second thing that he argues there is that human rights is a Christian invention. An atheist who is well-renowned right now would say, hey, if you believe in any sort of thing of human rights, that started with Christianity. I would agree with him on that point. Why? Because the Bible tells us a story, a real story, that is so countercultural to every single culture that things were written in the Bible to help prove a point. And what is that point? It's the point that was communicated in Genesis chapter 1, the very first book of the Bible, when this is what it says. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heaven, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. The atheist is saying that you really have two options. You can either believe that no one has any sort of human value or worth, and if you believe that, you should live your life that way. Because guess what? You only got till the end of your life, and that's it. But if you don't, he would argue that the Christian value is where things started. So this is my last thought here. Whatever category you might fall into, whether that's the 90-something% of religious people, or maybe you're in the minority, which would be the atheist, agnostic, or nuns. There's so much to be explored about the reality of what truth is. If you believe in religion, the question then is which one? If you're atheist, are you willing to accept all that comes with that? As an agnostic or a nun, are you willing to give it a try to answer life's most important question? Because if your answer to life is, hey, maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't, or I believe there's something out there, then shouldn't we take some time as the most brilliant people to ever walk this earth to research and understand the answer to life's most important question? So as we walk along this journey, probably either till the end of the beginning or the end of the summer, and we'll walk through each and everything. Next week, we're going to talk about Christianity as a whole. Why Christianity versus some of those other religions. As we walk through that, I want to welcome your questions, your insights. Hopefully, you'll go home, you'll do a little bit of study. Hopefully, the questions that you bring to me, I'll have to go home and do a little bit of study, right? I want this to be a season where we can all walk through this together, and none of us feel like any of our questions are unwarranted or unwanted, and we can figure out the same thing that so many people came to understand. There are over, I think it's 33% of the world right now claims Jesus Christ as the Savior. It's the number one religion in the world. I think there's a reason for that. The reason I think is because it's true. But I don't want us to say that it's true because Harrison said it. I want us to figure out it's true because we all came to that conclusion ourselves. Pray with me. Father, thank you for just laying out and preserving so much of history and so many artifacts and things that we can turn to that help us answer all these questions that we have. As we'll see in the next couple weeks, man, you truly did something amazing over the last many thousands of years. I pray that those here in this room, regardless of which category they're in, they're willing to come back and ask more questions. Maybe bring somebody else and be like, hey, let's figure this thing out together. Let's not wait till I'm 20, 30, 40 years old to start figuring out, hey, let's figure out this life thing. Because if we believe there's something on the other side of this, we need to find out what it is. And I pray that you guide us as we try to find that answer. Pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, listen. So we're gonna do small groups, and there's just gonna be some easy questions for us to talk through. Feel free to ask any of those questions that you might have, even if we didn't talk about them today, with your small group leader. And that's all I got for you. So, adios, amigos. Yeah, I saw.